was working at an institute called the National Center of Biological Sciences. This is just north of here, in the north of Bangalore. And in the span of about 6 months, we lost 2 of our beautiful young women students to suicide, okay? And not only did I know those students very well, but my own nephew had taken his own life just a few months before this incident happened. And so obviously I was really deeply impacted by these losses, and I just threw myself into the aftermath. You know, I was meeting all of these friends and students, becoming kind of a listening ear to the students on the campus. I started advocating to the administration for all sorts of changes that need to be had on campus to make the campus healthier and more safe for students. And I became a really strong and vocal advocate for mental health and wellness, and in science and academia. But what I didn't realize in this process was the mix of reactions that I was going to feel from different members of my community and outside my community. Because, you know, not everybody actually believed the information that they were getting about the loss of these women. They didn't quite trust the stories that they were hearing. And some other people actually didn't even think there was a problem. They're like, there's not a problem. These are random incidents. These were not indicative of any systemic need. And then others actually agreed that there was maybe a problem, but they didn't think that they had anything to do with it. And that experience of not being able to convince, well, honestly, I tried to convince everybody, right? It took such a toll on me that it took a toll on my own mental health as well. But these experiences, both my scientific experience of loss and my personal experience of loss, they taught me the most valuable lesson that I've ever had, which is that no matter how valuable something is to you, whether it's a rhododendron valley or even a human life, okay, it will only be important to the people around you if they also see the value in it. Okay, they also need to value it. And that's when I had the opportunity to meet the principal scientific advisor to the government of India. And with his encouragement, I founded something called the ECHO Network. And the ECHO Network is entirely about value for people, but also value for the animals and the plants and the life around us. And what we do is we're a social innovation partnership, and we bring people together from all different walks of life. Scientists, but also business persons, farmers, painters, CEOs, government representatives, and people from NGOs. And we bring them together and we have them meet with each other. And we use a proprietary science-based process to help them to listen to each other, to identify points of common value where they both see the value together, and then actually work with them to work through the process and co-create solutions for sustainable development that work directly back into communities across India and across the world. And this process actually has led to some really wonderful outcomes that have been happening both at the national level here in India, but also internationally, with missions at the national level, MOUs with various governments, and even at local city bodies, and getting on committees to make changes on the ground. So this has been a really wonderful outcome from a very painful pair of experiences. But, in the end, I'm still a woman, okay? And no matter how much success that I have, whether I speak at the Nobel Conference or the G20, or I found an international network, I still get devalued by certain people who are inclined to do so. And this is very true, not only for women, but any minority, or actually anyone who is less empowered in their social structure. So I've had to learn how to combat that. How do I combat this devaluation that's coming at me? And the first thing that I've learned to do is to know your own value. And this, I think, seems obvious. I think everybody would say, yes, we should all know our own value, but I didn't really understand what it meant myself until I actually was on the other side of being devalued on several occasions. And I want to give you a funny little example of this. A few years ago in my lab at NCBS, one of the a safety inspector came to the lab, okay? I have an experimental lab, and he said that I had a fire hazard with our helium tank. And I don't know if you remember from your high school chemistry, but helium is a noble gas, okay? And a noble gas means it cannot burn, okay? So I tried to calmly talk to the safety inspector and explain to him that I didn't need to protect this helium tank, that it was fine. But he became more and more irate because I was disagreeing with him, to the point that I thought, is there something that I'm missing? Did I forget the periodic table? Did I do something wrong? And I have a PhD. I have a degree in chemistry. I actually designed the lab that he was inspecting, so of course I know what I was talking about, but it caused me to doubt it because I was being told I was wrong. And I've had to learn how to retain my own value and see, if I know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm talking about, and it doesn't matter what the other person thinks. So that's a very important lesson. I have to keep relearning that all the time. Another thing that I've had to learn is actually how to identify something called false prophets. And for those of you, especially young leaders, both men and women, this is not a gender-based, to come from our last speaker, it's not a gender-based talk, because this is valuable to anybody, okay? You're going to meet false prophets throughout your life. And these are people who seem like they value you on the surface, but they really don't value you underneath the surface. And I'll give you two examples. One I call the spineless sibling. This is somebody who's kind of at your level or similar to your background. Maybe if you're a woman, it's a woman like you. Maybe they're from your hometown or from your cultural upbringing or your religion, or you share a lot in common. And they'll be your pal. They'll say, "Yeah, I get where you're coming from." They'll be very sympathetic. They'll listen to you. They'll agree with you. They'll tell their own stories, and you'll have this sort of kinship. But the moment that your value is challenged in public and in their presence, they'll just disappear. They won't stand up for you, and sometimes they won't even stand up for themselves if it's also their value that's being challenged at the time. So that's one you have to watch out for. Another is something I call the benevolent boss. Okay, this is usually a person of a very high position of power or influence, either in your career choice or in your community, and they'll actually often help you out. They'll give you a job maybe, or they'll give you a scholarship, or they'll introduce you to some very influential people. But as you start banking on those opportunities and as you start becoming successful, they'll disappear. And that's because they were not giving you these opportunities because they valued you. They saw you as a charity case, okay? And that's really important, because that means that once you become less, helpless, and once you and can stand up on your own, they'll not want to help you anymore, or they might even actually become competitive against you because they'll see you as a challenge, which is even worse. But we don't want just people who talk or just people who feel sorry for us, right? We want advocates, and advocates are essential for your career, no matter what you decide to do. If you decide to stay home with your family, or if you decide to become a CEO, this is important at any level of your life, in fact. And advocates are really easy to spot, because they're the ones that actually do value you for who you are, and not only what you are now, but what you can become. And they do things for you without you having to ask for them. And the best way to identify an advocate is that that person will talk about you even when you're not in the room, and even when they're not getting something out of it. That is the best way to identify an advocate. And it's not necessarily somebody who has a lot of power. They may be, somebody very close to your level, but just maybe has a few more connections or opportunities. So hang on to them, because they are vital for your future. And last but not least, do not settle, okay? Do not settle for anything. All right, because you will get challenged. All of these things will happen to you, and all of these challenges has happened in my life, and many more challenges that I don't want to discuss today, but maybe if you come to me afterwards, we can chat about it, where I have felt that I have been taken advantage of. And I have learned through these experiences to trust myself, trust my own value, and identify those advocates out there. So, it took two really, really difficult experiences for me to understand, how important value is in society. So I just want to end by answering that question, okay? So how much is a life worth? Well, I think a life is worth as much as every year, every day, and every second of our future, because we need people to value themselves, but also value each other and work together, because our planet's calling us. Thank you.